Please, round of applause for Mr. Downey.
All right, great to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Big companies like Google, we believe, all big companies really should have an open dialogue about what they're doing, some transparency. So we really appreciate the fact that you're here and willing to have a conversation about what's going on in the world of privacy and identity.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited. I love seeing all these people in the crowd. It's been so nice after like 2 years of just staring at Hollywood squares on my video screen. And I can already feel the energy. You guys did a great job this morning. I also maybe feel a bit special because there's two of you interviewing me. Did I do something special or maybe wrong?
Well, it's a function of market cap. When you exceed $1 trillion, we got to double up the number of questioners.
Usually we bring more Googlers to the call. So.
That's right. Well, I know we could talk all morning since you have obviously such a broad business, but we did title it The State of Privacy and Identity, so we're going to try to narrow the focus a little bit. One thing I want to start with, to throw some kudos at Google is obviously like Dick talked about some of the changes going on in the mobile app ecosystem, the big changes with like Apple moving IDFA to opt-in, and that was a mandate. That was an announcement, and here's the time frame that it'll be coming, and then it was extended a little bit, but it was a mandate. In contrast, when you guys have announced your new initiatives around privacy and identity, what we've seen is this collaborative approach. It's worked together, it's going to be phased in over a couple years, and so, first we want to just talk about what's been the internal dialogue, for reaching that kind of approach.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Thank you for noticing. It's not often that we give a lot of warning on changes. Usually you log into your computer and something changed. And we get a lot of feedback on that. I think on this one, we put the blinker on about 20 blocks before we took the turn, and we got a lot of appreciation from the marketplace. I think it's a pretty simple equation. I think, from a broader perspective, we care a lot about privacy, right? And consumers' privacy is probably the most important thing that happens in any Google product review or whether it's ads or non-ads from that perspective. And you had to have a place that protected consumer privacy, gave them choice, gave them transparency, gave them control. So we want to make sure we could get to a state that was good for them, because you want to protect an open internet for consumers first and foremost. Like, there's a lot of information that goes there. That's our ethos of our value proposition. They get educated, they shop, they find content, and you want to make that free. And that's really the trade that's out there right now. And to do that, you have to make sure the other constituents of the marketplace can be successful. And publishers provide all that free content, and they make their money from that free content through advertising. So you can't just take something away without replacing it with something that's viable, that works for their business models, and enables them to continue to provide that service that they are to consumers at the end of the day. And of course, we have a lot of advertisers, which are really important, and they advertise their products and services, and they needed time to make sure that ecosystem also worked for them. So that means you have to collaborate. You have to protect that open internet. You guys love to use the term free and open internet a lot. To me, that means maybe something a little bit different than walled gardens versus non-walled gardens. It means making businesses work for large and small. You think the billions of dollars of economic activity that happen from small publishers and small advertisers, you have to give them a currency to run those businesses. And we've really opened up the world for so many small businesses that can be on the corner of Marblehead, Massachusetts, and have a global consumer base. And that's because we do things correctly and we give them opportunities to scale. And you have to replace that versus just taking away, because those are the types of businesses that suffer.
Yep.
So I guess the question I would have was, you've got a variety of divisions within Google. I'm trying to understand who's driving these policies.
Yeah.
You got the old double-click business, you got search, YouTube, Chrome, Android. Two-part question. One is, what divisions and how do you sort of internally coalesce around what your position on privacy policy ought be? And then second, you mentioned a variety of constituents there in your answer, but to whom are you optimizing for?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because people really don't always understand the complication of a Google matrix. And we have a consumer business, So if you log on to Google and you get Google Search, you get Google Maps, you get YouTube, that's a consumer-oriented business. And then you have an ads business. And Chrome, in this case, and Android are in the consumer side. They have their own PAs. They make their own decisions. And then ads is in the ads business, and we try and make it work within those ecosystems. So if you're going through something like cookie deprecation, for example, that's a Chrome decision. And the ads group, me, up to Philip Schindler, doesn't actually have any say. And in fact, we purposely keep them separate. You probably noticed, because you keep up on the trends, we made those commitments to the CMA, that what happens in Chrome is different than what happens in ads. And we have to react to what they're doing. So when you're dealing with deprecation or identity or privacy in our platforms, that's entirely a consumer PA point of view. Their number one task is to protect consumers' privacy, but make sure that they collaborate with the ecosystem to make sure it works. If you come over to my side on the advertising platform side, I try and make work what they decide on. Right? So if they're going to go to a sandbox, we try and make sure we can operate in that environment. If they were going to go to an identity, we were going to make sure we could operate in that environment. We're going to start to look at other alternatives that existed, like first-party data or machine learning. But we're more in a response mode. And we care a lot about privacy, obviously. But we're also making sure we solve for our customers, and the customers of our platforms are publishers and advertisers. So we have that natural tension. We all align principally on consumer privacy, but we have different tasks at the end of the day to make sure it works for everyone.
So curious, when the Chrome announcements come out, any heads up, or you learn with the rest of the industry, or like what's the dynamic?
I don't get a lot of heads up. So like I think my last pre-pandemic stage appearance was at the IAB, and I was on stage, and I had to defend Chrome deprecation, for which I was not involved in. And everyone was pretty upset about that. We probably weren't that ready. I actually see the announcements when the market does.
Really?
Right?
A little bit
so, and if they do a pre-briefing for everyone, we get a pre-briefing.
Yeah.
And then I have a product team that then has to go develop against whatever they start to announce. Right? So we're in the same zone.
Yeah.
Like I consider myself one of many constituents in the advertising ecosystem that operates within Chrome or Apple or Android, and we have to respond with everyone else.
I think you touched on this a little bit, but so obviously there's like the consortium of the folks in the room, and you together, defining kind of the next era, but also within Google, with Chrome, with YouTube, with the various constituents. How much do you get together to talk about privacy? Okay, hey Chrome, you're doing this now, making sure there's alignment, or is it really truly kind of like individual entities that you're just like different companies?
Yeah.
How does that
What PAs are almost like different companies. So we obviously, our product teams talk to the Chrome engineers about interoperability once they've released the API things. We set up the same conversations for anyone else in the ad tech ecosystem as well. But they collaborate in that front. But mostly you see Chrome developing their API structures. That, if you have followed how that works, that's an open collaborative platform. Anyone can submit proposals. So we've submitted proposals in the past from the ad standpoint. We've trialed proposals that existed. We've looked at baseline APIs that they've released and worked with them to figure out how to operate within them and done our own tests behind them. But we don't cross streams at all on those things. We're really just in a react mode. I think privacy is always an undercutting thing in Google. So we do have a privacy PA that makes sure you're adhering to what our principles are as a company. So if you're going to develop ads products, for example, there's always a discussion and a debate and a decision around, does this meet our privacy norms that we have as a company and our values, and does it meet what we believe to be the regulatory norms that exist in various parts of the world? And then we start to make decisions on what we're going to build against, or what we're going to invest in, and what we're going to communicate out to the market. And Chrome does that on their side as well, but they're separate discussions.
So when Chrome came out and initially announced the 2022 sunset sort of time period, and then revised it to 2023, you're on the receiving end of that. Mm-hmm. So presumably that's not ads driving that.
That's not fun either for us.
No.
Like we share your pain.
Right.
Because Chrome announces something, and then I have a product team that wants to build to that, and they run out and they announce things, and then everyone's like, where is it? When can we try it?
Right.
I'd love to trial that. And then when you push that back and we still haven't answered the sandbox questions, it becomes problematic. So we feel the same pain that anyone might feel in the ecosystem from that level.
So I presume the answer to this next question is I don't know. But is there any, do we have any confidence that even the 2023 time period is going to stick? Jeff Green and others have suggested that that they actually can't do it. In fact, there are, we'll talk about the regulatory sort of impacts on it in a second here. But I mean, I guess you have no sense as to how exacting that time frame is.
Yeah, I actually don't know when they're going to decide on those finals. I plan as if we are. Like, if you're going to predict something, it's easier to predict that it's going to happen versus it's not going to happen. Because I think a lot of advertisers or publishers or tech companies can get trapped in just assuming it's not going to happen. I know the intent is there to do it. Like, that's, without question, that's what they want to do. They've been very clear on that with anyone that asks them, including us. It's just a matter of making sure it's comfortable for the marketplace. They have published API roadmaps on how you're going to start testing targeting methodologies, measurement methodologies, so anyone can build against those, and we're building against those. The other thing I think is important is, it's less for me about dates and times. It's more about why is it changing and what do you have to do differently. And there are really good reasons why those decisions are getting made. And the first and foremost is that consumers want more privacy, right? Consumers view that, and I would tend to agree with them, that privacy is a basic human right, right? If you start thinking about how much the world has changed and how reliant you are on digital versus 2 years ago, it's extreme, right? And your healthcare is online, your shopping, your communications with your family, anything that you're doing happens online. And therefore, people care a lot more about what's happening for them. And they just want to know who they're sharing data with and why they're sharing data with them and making sure it's very purposeful, right? That's the driving factor. It's not like cookie deprecation. There's a whole new consumer expectation that matters, and that's the principle that we're trying to honor. So things like cross-site tracking tend to conflict in a consented environment, right? That's the principle that many of the browsers have relied on, which is a legitimate one. Things like consent, purposeful consent, are things that matter, right? So you have to start thinking about developing solutions for the future that work no matter what they are, right? So I don't think about waiting for sandbox. I think about solving a consumer's problem prior.
And was that the rationale for the cohort suggestions, flock, and then topics? Was that in an effort to try and have a fix that works for all constituents?
Yeah, so what Chrome has produced, they produce Sandbox, and that's all the cohort models, learning modules that are on device that don't leave, the deferential privacy, things like that. And they're really trying to find ways to, create more aggregation, create measurement that works without giving personalized data to everyone. And that's what a lot of those trials are for and a lot of those APIs are designed for. I think that's one solution, right? And what we ran into the challenge was most of our customers in the marketplace was saying, okay, Sandbox is Google's bet, period, and it's not going to happen until it shows up. I don't look at it that way, and our products don't look at it that way. Sandbox in that privacy-preserving API is one option, right? And I think about playing more broadly in a privacy playground versus just the sandbox that Chrome is doing. Because when they produce something, we'll build to it. Like, I start thinking, and the challenge I give to our teams and our product teams is prove to the market that you don't need cookies to be successful. What are the alternatives that you can do without waiting for a tech company to give you a framework, right? And that leads us to invest in things like first-party data. And what does it mean to have true first-party data that's clean, consented, purposeful? Like, those are really three critical words. Clean, consented, purposeful means I've talked to you, I've asked you, would you like to experience the brand with me? And I'll give you all this value, and you say yes. I didn't get your name from the neighbor. Right? And I think that's an important thing that we can drive because it drives a lot of value for marketers when they start leveraging cleaner data because it does perform better than random third-party data, right? And that's an important thing that we're building solutions around today that we don't have to wait for Sandbox on. We start leveraging these things called machine learning and automation. Like there's technology advances which are pretty phenomenal in the last 5 to 10 years that start to drive performance as well. And they can take some of that first-party seed data and drive performance. They can find trends and performance drivers that you couldn't see with the human eye relying on third-party cookies. And you have a lot of marketers that are driving upwards performance, just leveraging modern technology as well. And those can be non-reliant on cookies. They can be non-reliant on a sandbox solution from a browser. And there are things that we put in place today to move people to a future state that renews trust with marketers and consumers and gives them a chance to have a relationship and better personalization without trampling on their privacy.
But for the ecosystem, it's very important for them to be able to expand reach beyond first-party data, because Google has lots of first-party data, but the ecosystem has less, right? So there's got to be a way to propagate.
Yeah, well, you have to like redefine what first-party. There's a lot of companies that would suggest they're data poor, right? They think if you don't have a massive graph, that you don't have first-party data, and you put these strategies in the hands of many advertisers, so I've seen them out there. A lot of companies have really good first-party data, and sometimes that is things that are more obvious, like emails or logins. Other times it's things like point-of-sale data, CRM data. They might have found some other partnership data that is aggregated, clean data. And people can build really smart models around what an audience actually looks like. You almost have to separate data from identity and say data leads to better audience creation. What are the sources that you have? And any advertiser or publisher can start to collect the areas that they think are important, and then they can fuel that with more aggregated econometric data to build assumptions and profiles that I think work. And that's an important step that you see a lot of people doing. It's why the database business has really taken off. If you think about the Snowflakes or BigQuery from Google, because people are connecting data sources, right? And then that's going to be useful in a niche. Like there's going to be so much one-to-one personalization that you need to do. But then you're really trying to find other people that look like that. And you can start to drive reach and scale through baseline machine learning. Tell the machine what types of people you're looking for, and it'll go find it, right? And you start with a baseline of what that ideal person looks like. And marketers, I think, are quite comfortable with this because we've targeted in demographic profiles for ages. We have to find those that work, personalize where it makes sense, and then go find more that look like that and then bring them into more of a personalization fold. And you can do that today without having to wait for Chrome. It's just it's a decision and it's a mindset shift that you have to play with.
Yep. I think we've gotten through less than half of our topics.
I know,
but,
I know.
Well, want to take the last one?
Well, in theory, right, Ads Data Hub was the first clean room, right?
Yeah,
it was. So I guess final question is, how do you handle the criticism that privacy is a double-edged sword with antitrust on the other side? Because the more Google moves towards privacy in terms of some of the implementations of policy, one could argue, in fact, several regulatory authorities, starting in the UK, and now there's US legislation, that have suggested that these privacy moves, in fact, have an anti-competitive reality to them, even if it wasn't the original intent, and may, in fact, hold up some of the implementations of those well-intended privacy policies. How do you, and does that manifest itself in legislation that tries to, break up Google, as we've seen being proposed just in the last month?
Yeah. So my favorite trick in the morning, Terry, is when I get up, I meditate. I'm a bit of a yogi. And there's this construct in meditation where you just let the traffic go by you and you just let it go. And you've outlined all the economic and privacy regulation chaos that exists in my world, and I just don't pay attention to it, honestly, because I stick to first principles, and I'm going to have that tension. I can't get away from it, right? Because they're different bodies, there's different countries. It's always about first principles, right? And we have to solve for both. So if I'm dealing with first principles of privacy, it's always, can I create safe environments and have strong privacy norms that respect consumers' right to choose? Yes or no? So every decision that we have leads to that. And what I come back to every single day is the way the ecosystem works and the way it's worked for 25 years is not sustainable based on what consumers want, which is a privacy thing, and based on what regulators say they don't want you to have, which are their way of protecting consumers. So we lay out simple strategies like if it doesn't respect the consumer, it won't last, it's not worth our long-term investment, let's get it right. And I look at that as, for us, that means we have to invent a new status quo, right? And I don't want to be one of those tech companies or platform companies that tries to hold on to the old status quo. That means you make no progress, it means you go backwards, it means you miss massive opportunity to embrace a new future and have new results. So we want to invent the status quo. So I just look at that and we just plow straight ahead. Like, how do we make this work? How do we make it better than it was? How do we respect privacy? And then when we launch products in market, we say, is it going to fit from a regulatory standpoint? And then we try and make sure it works for everyone. Because on the regulatory standpoint, you don't usually run into problems with regulators if you make sure it works for everyone. Right. So of course, YouTube will have things that work for YouTube because it's an owned and operated property. I would expect Disney operates the same way. New York Times operates the same way. And then as we build a platform, like I run a platform, you have integrations, you let people make their own decisions on how it's working. And we just try and build those in.
So on the catch-22 of privacy versus antitrust, your answer is not my job. Okay, good. So no, but I get you're living the same reality everyone else.
You can't win that argument. So
Right,
you have principles, you do strong privacy foundations, and then you make sure it works for everyone.
Terrific.
And then
Appreciate
you're
you
fine.
being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.